What's up everyone, this is ScherBR talking, welcome back to my channel. On today's video, I bring you news for Romancing SaGa ReUniverSe. The first one is the announcement of the Romancing Festival 7 Heroes banners that brings new power creep in the game. Then we also have the announcement of the SaGa Soul Michelle banner. Well, we already have the information about those two, and I have to say, Romancing Festival 7 Heroes is a very good banner, and most people should be pulling on it. Well, let's go straight out to Reddit. Hans43 did this amazing post as always. Thank you so much. This was an Herculean job, and I'm sure it took a lot of time. Then, let's start talking about Wagnas. He's the first one here. We have 120% for SGR, Endurance, Intelligence, and Will. And then 82% for Dexterity and Agility. It is enough to usually land the attacks, but Wagnas is now a counter specialist. You can see that it decreases damage taken by 40% and then by another 40% via intrinsic if you are resisting, then 37% chance to evade alongside 20% damage increase at all times. Battle Begins starts with 12 BP. When attacking, casts an attack boost of medium effect, increasing damage potential by 10% stacks. Then when attacking on Overdrive, it also casts 15%. It is to AoE, so all of your allies will get the attack boost when Wagnas is attacking. Now, when you are attacked, Wagnas will then cast a defense boost of 10% to all allies. Well, it is stacks, it's just like Joe, but Joe is medium, while Wagnas is small. But it's pretty awesome because Wagnas can taunt with medium effect and also has stealth applied to all other allies. This is the best type of taunt, and the same one as Emperor has, and even Faye. And by the end of a turn, gets 45 points of OG Gouge because he wants to attack on Overdrive. Just remember that on Overdrive attack, you actually will trigger the attack boost 2 times. Besides the taunt effect, when attacking, it gets 1 BP, and when attacking on Overdrive, you will chase with skill. It's actually the same skill that you just use it theoretically. Well, we have skill number 2, that is a 12 AP cost, double S power, pierce attack that then enters a counter stance that every time that you get directly attacked, you're gonna counter with Javelin Plus. That is a double S power pierce attack, and he will also nullify pierce to self. When you attack on Overdrive with this skill, you're gonna trigger another time, so that when the enemy attacks you, you will counter twice. Because this stance lasts for 2 turns, theoretically, if you get into Overdrive again on the next turn, you can do as much as 4 counters if you use this skill again. But theoretically, it's not really practical. Most of the time, you can get as much as 3 counters, one from Overdrive and the other one from a normal turn. And even then, it will be a little hard, since 12 BP is a little too much. If you don't have enough BP, you can also just use this skill number 1 that will give you Guard Up Medium. Even on Overdrive, this will still trigger the same counter stance with Javelin Plus. But if you want to use a spell, then you're gonna counter with Rising Flame. And that is the same attack that you get after using skill 3, that will then do double S power, enter the counter stance. When you get hit directly, you're gonna counter with Fire, triple S power. He will then nullify heat damage to self. When you are using those counter stances, he will then cast defense boost as well, but that is to self. See, defense boost medium, those are 25% value. So Wagnas is pretty simple. He is a mix of Joe and Final Emperor of Swords. He buffs party defenses via being hit, he buffs offenses when attacking, he has a very good counter, 2 different types of elements. He's only lacking a status buff when being hit, so it's easy to use him, at least for 2 counters. If you have lots of VP battery, he can become even stronger. Very good to use on Remembrance fights, and I do believe he deserves a 4.5 out of 5. Moving on, we have Noel, and he has 125% STR, should have been higher, but 120% Endurance and Will, those are very good values. He's a little slow with just 96% Agility. But he has G-Sword Intrinsic, increasing his damage potential by 30% and then 40% damage reduction when resisting and 37% chance to evade. On Battle Begins, he then fused Overdrive Gouge of everyone. He then also casts 3 over enhances, increasing the overdrive damage by 60% total by turn 3. And by the end of a turn, he gives 15 points of OG God to everyone. Now, on the start of the fight, he then gives this Saving Heart, Bond of Strength, for 1 time for everyone. What is this? When they land attacks, they will trigger Weak Attack Boost. And then Weak Attack Boost will increase your damage potential by 15% when landing weak attacks. And there's also a Resist Defense Boost that will decrease damage taken from resisted attacks by 10%. And that is to all allies, so everyone that attacks in your party will be casting this to everyone, including themselves. So you can get as much as 5 stacks of all of these effects. Then if you attack on overdrive, you have the same effects again, only increasing the defense boost from 10% to 15%, keeping the attack boost to 15% as well. So all will happen. So you can get actually 10 stacks, but 5 defense boosts of 10, and then another 5 defense boosts of 15. That's a lot of effects. Sadly, all these effects will only last for 1 turn. So depending on the order of your attacks, some characters will just get more benefit from the attack boost. Although the resist defense boost will work for everyone as long as you are attacking before your boss. Besides, when he attacks, he gives an attack boost and a defense boost to everyone. In this case, the defense boost is 10%. The attack boost is 15%. It lasts for 2 turns, so this one is better. It stacks as well. And he always chases with Life Drains Word. That is a weak attack, but it has Slash and Shadow damage, self-buffs Endurance and Will by 15%, and also heals a little. Now, if you attack on Overdrive, he'll then chase with Gloom Dancing Blade. That is a 4S power attack with Slash and Shadow that heals HP by 1,500. Then he will give an attack boost to everyone of 20% and a defense boost of 15%. This will stack because when you are attacking on Overdrive, you're going to trigger 2 times attack and defense boost, much like his own effect that he applies to everyone. So there's a lot of attacks and defense boost stacking here. A character has a Sheep Chase, but when he attacks on Overdrive, he has a very good one because he heals the party, and it's actually strong. He may not do that much damage himself, but if he's allowing everyone to do a little more, that makes sense. So first skill is 0 BP, and it also has Poison, probably to help with Past Remembrance to apply on Carmine, but besides that, not really needed. The second skill is 5 BP cost, and it will then buff break the enemy. And then we have third skill. That is something that you need to keep using because, well, Saving Heart and Bond of Strength that will allow everyone to keep casting their attacks and defense boosts only lasts for 1 turn, and you have to keep recasting. The thing is, the Saving Heart part of the passive is the one that you will be able to trigger as soon as you attack. The Bond of Strength is the one that triggers on Overdrive. So even if you don't Overdrive, this lasts for 5 turns, meaning that you can actually save. If you use it again, your character wouldn't have it 2 times. See? So that instead of 5 effects, then you will have then 10 effects if you manage to stack. The attack itself is not that strong, it's just S power. It costs 10 BP. You have to see that he doesn't generate too much BP. He has only 5 BP per turn, meaning that he will need extra 5 from external sources in order to keep using this skill every single turn. It is not that hard to do that. If you have Leon and Sheree in your party, they already give it enough. But maybe just 1 BP battery will never be enough. And then you have to cycle between skill 3 and skill 1, and that decreases the reliability of your Noel being your best defense booster. In some situations, he can be your only one, but as the game goes forward, I believe you still need 2 defense boosters. And the good thing is that this guy attacks and gives even more effects, like increasing your damage potential. Noel is another 4.5 out of 5. Moving on, we have Rocbouquet, and she has 135% intelligence and 100% will. And 100% endurance as well. Still has some dexterity because she can inherit S's word skills, and 95% agility because of accuracy for spells. A little higher than normal love and charisma. She starts the fight with her Overdrive Gauge Fillet in 13 BP to use the skill 3. And then on turn begins, if her Overdrive Gauge is full, she will then give herself an attack boost of extreme effect. That will increase her damage potential by 50%, lasts for 3 turns. This will stack because she tries to get into overdrive more often. And if her overdrive is not full, by the end of a turn, she has a 50% chance to trigger a passive that will recharge her overdrive 3 turns. But that's 50% chance. It's not a guarantee, right? But every time that she's not on full overdrive, she will then try to trigger this. So it is RNG based. Now, when attacking on overdrive, she would chase with Umbra 11 plus. This Umbra 11 plus, it's a double S power attack with Shadow and Lightning damage. And when you chase with Umbra 11, it will then chase again, but this time with Gravity Pearl. That is a 4S power attack with Shadow and Lightning. A pretty strong one as well. So, 2 chase attacks, but related to overdrive. On non-overdrive turn, she's not going to do much. On turn begins, she gives herself Overhands. That will increase her overdrive damage by 50% for a total of 150. When she attacks, she gets 2 extra BP. And then an attack boost of 10% for 2 turns in stack and 5% intelligence buff. Those are not that great, but okay. In 3 turns, she'll be on full overdrive damage. Then she has 20% damage increase at all times, reduces damage taken by 30% at all times, and has 40% increase in combo and 40% increase on overdrive for a total of 100% increase from this and 150% from that other one, for a total of 250% on overdrive, besides the attack boost that will trigger when she's on overdrive. But you have a free attack if you want to use, no BP in my opinion. And the second skill is pretty interesting. It was changed to fast in global, and this one is cheap, but before attacking will grant weak point for Shadow and Lightning. This weak point mark is the same one as Madeline does, so that every time that you attack the enemy with lightning attacks, it will receive 20% defense down. Exactly like Madeline, you can stack this multiple times with multi-hit attackers to reach very high damage potential. Now imagine bringing Ihachi, Madeline, and Rocbouquet. The enemy will just melt. You can even bring, for example, Khalid and Hana, because Hana blocks damage for 2 turns, and you're gonna win in 3 turns fights that allow you to use these characters. But the good thing is that Rocbouquet has 2 different weak point mark. She can also enable Shadow Squads that will be better now when we get Joe and Bertrand better. And if you already have Sarui and some other characters, she fits in those squads as well. And this skill can only be used one time because it's pretty powerful and will be important for her future version as well. The third skill is a triple S Lightning Shadow single target attack. And before attacking, you cast Attached Force for 1 turn, so that all your lightning attacks will be multiplied by 50%. So if a skill is supposed to do 1 million damage, you would then do 1.5 million damage, even her chase attacks as well. This is a new type of effect released together with Rocbouquet. If you have her bunny style, you can inherit a skill that gives her yet another chase on overdrive, OG points, and extra overdrive damage too. It is the best stuff to get, but you can also use it as a debuffer if you want. Via inheritance, I just don't know if it's good. You should just use her as a damage enabler, in my opinion. Overall, I believe she deserves a 4 out of 5, but on Kihachi teams, maybe even a 4.5. Moving on, there's Bokhohn, and he has 115% endurance and will, alongside very poor STR, agility, and intelligence. Bokhohn is a support unit that barely attacks. Iron Wall Defense 7 will give him 50% damage reduction at all times, starts the fight with 12 BP, gets another 2 every turn for a total of 5, and casts an attack boost of 15% every turn, that only lasts for 1 turn, but also a heat up of 10% to all allies, so by turn 5 onwards, it will be a 65% damage potential increase to all allies. Now, skill number 1 is a free attack that can debuff STR, that you'll be using if you don't have VP. Skill number 2 casts Innervate 3 for STR and Will to all allies. This will allow you to have a 25% chance to debuff STR and Will by 15%, and this will be permanent in the fight. This works well with characters that have multi-attacks, not multi-hits. Chases are considered a new attack, and he can even inherit another Enervate from his most recent style that will debuff intelligence and agility. So if he casts this once and then the other one, you will have a very good way to allow your characters to debuff. Not really reliable, but good enough in some fights. Then his third skill is a support one that has fast, buffs attack boost by 50%, weak attack boost by 50%, so that it triggers when you land weak attacks. A defense boost that decreases damage taken by 35%, lasts for 2 turns, and by the end of a turn, the target will also get a full overdrive charge. Yeah, you can choose, it's single target, one character will get all of these effects. Not just that, because it even applies more. 10 BP once, then an attack boost that is time 30%, that lasts for 4 turns, and then a weak attack boost that is 40%, lasts for 4 turns. This can stack as well. And 35% buff to all status, alongside a defense boost that will decrease damage taken by 30%, 2 turns, a guard up that decreases damage taken by 35%, 2 turns as well. So you have 3 ways to decrease damage taken, 4 ways to improve your damage via boost, and an all status buff. He also recharges his overdrive. It is useful so that he can use this skill again on the next turn and apply it once again on the same character or in another character. It's nice, it does improve damage by quite a lot, but he's not attacking. So let's say you want to improve Kihachi's damage, for example. You can improve Kihachi's damage by bringing Madeline. Madeline attacks. She also applies weak defense down. That multiplies Kihachi damage to become more than double it already is. I don't know if Bokhohn will allow you to be so much better when attacking, because he himself does not offer too much to other people. I don't know if he is so good, but he does really help on Remembrance fights. If you want to improve your Tatiana, for example, she will do a lot of damage and finish it much sooner than you think. But ultimately, I do believe it's easy to power creep Bokhohn, because we will have versions that will do similar buffs for the whole party. I believe Hana exists, and Hana already applies a lot of things, with the problem having delay, but, well, I do think it's good, but not that important. But still, if you think about elemental squads, you need to have one elemental booster for each one of your damage dealers. The good thing about Bokhohn is that he works for everything, even for your counter units, for example. You could use this on Wagnas and allow Wagnas to do more damage, and that is actually pretty good. But I just believe that will be power creeped in the future. For now, I believe a 4 out of 5 is pretty good for Bokhohn. Moving on, we have Dantarg, and Dantarg has 125% SGR and agility. I thought they should have increased his agility, but not really all that bad. Endurance is 110%, and nothing else really matters here. You can inherit spear attacks, but I don't think you should. On Battle Begins starts with 13 BP and then increases 5 BP for everyone, so that they start with 25, including himself. Increases blunt damage for everyone by 50%, and on Turn Begins will give this Training Fist skill for everyone. If they land a blunt attack, they will get 4 BP, and then by the turn ends, they will feel 25 points of OG Gouge and another 25 points for a random ally. If you have a full squad that do blunt damage, then everyone gets extra 25 OG points, and then you have 5 different triggers that will land in any of your allies. Then we have Heat Up that increases damage by 50% 10 times. So on turn 10 he has a 500% damage increase. Takes time, but he builds up. By the end of a turn, he also already feels OG Gouge by 35. So you have 35 plus 25, that makes up for 60. Now, attacking, he will give an attack boost to self that will improve his damage potential by 20%. Then self buff SGR, endurance, agility, and will by 15%. If it's on overdrive, then he will then buff even more by another 30%, and then he will buff self by 20% instead, the same status. So you actually get 50% attack boosts and 35% status buffs. Always when attacking, chases with skill number 2. Skill number 2 is a double S and marks attack with just blunt damage that before attacking You then cast a 30% attack boost and a 35% defense boost to self. So he becomes better defensively and will even do more damage with this. And on overdrive attacks, will change with skill number 3. That is a 4S attack with just one hit that before attacking gives an attack boost of extreme effect. That increases damage potential by 50%. As a chase, the values are lower. The attack boost from skill 2 will be decreased to 25, and the attack boost from skill 3 will be decreased to 40%. He still has a 3 BP attack that can stun, but forget about this. Then from his last passive, he reduces damage taken at all times by 25% and also has 15% heat up 5 times for another 75% damage increase. Okay, so this character has 7 BP per turn when attacking, and he wants to use a 13 BP attack. You are better off using normal attacks if you don't have BP batteries and saving to just use skill 3, because skill 3 or even skill 2 will give you attack boost and all of your chase attacks will do more and more damage. In a right setup with other characters that do blunt damage, he is going to reach very high damage potential. He also combos well with Hana because Hana uses blunt attacks and she will get extra 4 BP to keep using her skill 3 at all times if you are lacking on BP batteries, but then it's better if he uses overdrive attack. That will also decrease a little bit of the effects that you get from Hana. So it's a trade-off, you have to decide. But it works in all other types of squads as well. Damage is very high, it's hard to explain, but if you reach turn 10 and stack all the attack boosts and all the status buffs, you're gonna see damages on the 10 millions even. He is yet another one that deserves 4 out of 5. I'm undecided, some people may say that it's even higher. But next one is Subier, and Subier has 126% STR and 105% agility alongside 110 endurance and will. Nothing else matters. This guy was buffed, now he can use one of his skill 2 times, but before we reach that, battle begins, he starts with 15 BP, fills his overdrive gauge, because he wants to use one of his prizes attack, and then he always changes 2 times with skill number 1. That is a single target E-power attack that decreases pierce and cold defenses by 10%. Lasts for 2 turns and it will stack. If you are on overdrive and you attack, you will then chase with skill number 3. That is a 15 BP attack, that's why he starts with 15. Blunt and cold with 8 hits of E-power. That is actually very useful because of his skill number 2. That is fast. You should use this one first, actually. And before attacking with a B-power attack, he will then grant weak point focus. So that every time that you use cold attacks, the enemy will receive a 20% defense down to cold attacks. Much like we discussed it about Rock, Madeline, and other characters. But he has to keep using this skill since it does not trigger via passive. You can use it 2 times, but every time you use skill number 3, you recharge the usage. So Subier wants to use this skill and then use skill number 3 to recharge, then go back to this one. He always changes twice, so that's actually okay, and he does have enough BP to be able to keep this cycle up. Besides the damage part, he also gives elemental blasting to the party with this skill that will last for 2 turns, so that when you use a cold attack, you can cast yourself a defense boost that will decrease damage taken by 10%, lasts for 2 turns, and stacks. Also, when attacking on overdrive, he has yet another chase, a triple S attack that decreases the enemy pierce and cold resistance. So he actually gets 9 BP per turn and 11 BP on overdrive attacks. That's quite a lot to allow him to keep cycling between skill 2 and 3. And when you decide, you can even use skill 2 twice to help some other damage dealers. Who? Hihachi, because she can do cold damage as well. So he works well by himself, although he's not really a very strong nuker, but he allows Hihachi to do even more. Besides, he has 50% damage increase because of 2 different passives. He then decreases damage taken when resisting by 25 and then by 40. A pretty interesting unit because we just got 4 news, and our 4 news is much better than the JP version, and he allows 4 news squad to be even better. And Cornelius is really useful on current game because of Kihachi. By himself is not that important, but if you have Kihachi, he totally deserves a 4 out of 5. The last one is Kazin, and he has 105% endurance, 110% will, alongside 130% intelligence. He needed even faster agility, but 105 should be more than enough in most case scenarios. Then he starts the fight with 14 BP, and the skill that he wants to use is his third one, an AoE attack with just E power. Okay, barely do any damage, but it's important to help trigger passes from other characters. When the attack lands, the enemy will lose SGR, agility, intelligence, and will by 30% as a command, and then he will buff SGR, agility, intelligence, and will, but not endurance, focus on that, by 40% as a command, and then the debuff value will be decreased by 25, and buff value will be decreased to 30 when using as a chase, since he always chases with this skill, even when using a normal attack. Using skill 3 and chasing allows you to debuff a total of 55 for this 4 status, and buff a total of 70% for those status. So you actually want to keep using this if possible. But this character only gets 1 BP when doing attacks, so a total of 5. And the skill costs 14. It's very hard to have enough BP to keep using this skill with this guy. But even using a normal attack or skill 1 that is a 2 EP attack will trigger the chase attack that will still apply at least 25% debuff and 30% buff to everyone. It is good, but sometimes not enough. Besides, skill 3 also applies defense down, even as a chase that will decrease the enemy's defenses by 10%, and also applies defense boost to all allies that will decrease damage taken by 10% and also stacks. So, it's already good enough. But forget about damage. When attacking, besides recovering BP, he also self-heals and gives attack boost that increases damage potential by 10%, lasts for 2 turns and stacks, self-buff intelligence agility as well by 5%. This will actually be 10% since he always chases. In the end, he's trying to improve his agility to be very fast because this skill is not fast. He does not have any fast inheritances as well. So you really rely on the enemy not being too fast, but it kind of works. He then has Latent Bloom Iron Wall that will give him 20% hit up 5 times alongside 20% damage increase. Forget about damage, this guy is not about that. I feel like Kazin is a replacement for those that didn't get Hana, but it's not as good as Hana. But Hana is a 5, of course. She's a very useful unit that changes how we face some enemies. This guy will work if you need to debuff SGR, agility, intelligence, but it does not debuff dexterity, so he does not cover all crowns. I don't think you should be pulling for him, but if he drops, he can even help you defeat the 7 heroes depending on your squad. But I think a 4 out of 5 is also good enough. I was thinking about a 3.5, but the status that he debuffs are actually pretty impressive. So this banner will receive a Gold Plus award. If you didn't know yet, it's a 7% banner, and you can use 3 gens and 7 characters instead of just 3. A lot of value, and all of them are at least good enough. Even if power creep eventually lands, you'll be using them for a while. Moving on, we have the SaGa Soul banner that starts with Michelle. She is pretty simple. It's a character that loses 2 LP to get 3 chases. She has S power chase, then she chases with her skill number 1, it's C power, but buffs SGR and agility by 15%, and she also chases with 4S power attack. So C power, then S power, and then a 4S power chase, 3 chases. She does have 60% damage increase from 2 different passives, reduces damage taken by 30%, and then by 40 if she resists, starts the fight with 13 to use her best attack. She also casts Elemental Blasting Blunt for all allies. When they use a blunt attack, they will trigger an attack boost that will increase damage potential by 10%, and also when landing blunt attacks, the enemy will receive a defense down to blunt attacks. So that actually is improve your damage potential when using blunt. She pairs up super well with Tatiana that attacks multiple times, And also, well, with Dantarg from this banner, because Dantargs allow you to get extra 4 BP when using Blunt. Only once, but still helps having better BP generation. Besides, when she attacks, she recovers HP and BP, so you will have at least 6 BP per turn. If you use Dantarg, 10 BP per turn. Casts another attack boost of 10% for 2 turns, and self-buffs SGR and agility by 5% only. Okay. So, all in all, you want to start the fight using skill number 2. This is a pretty interesting one. You can only use once, but you will increase your max BP by 30, so you have 50 BP at least, or 55 using Dantarg, and then we recover 30, so that you actually start with 40 with a limit of 50. And skill number 3 costs 13, and it's fast. Before attacking, it will also apply this weak point focus on the enemy. Again, you already have one on start of the fight. As you can see here, only lasts for 1 turn. And then attack the enemy with triple S power. So that every time that you attack this enemy, defense will decrease by 20% for blunt. Same thing as the latest Madeline, the recent Subier we were talking, and Rocbouquet. This is a way to increase your damage without buffing status, since sometimes bosses will break or buffs. Because she already changes 3 times. But it's even better if you are using characters like Tatiana that attacks multiple times. I don't think she will do as much damage as Dantarg or provide as much utility, because the extra 4 BP does help a ton. But if you have Tatiana or Leon, you can improve their damage, although Leon damage is really not keeping up. For this character, I'm thinking about either a 3.5 or a 4, probably a 4. Moving on, there's Sigfrei, and this character is very strange. He has Heat Up Extreme, increasing damage by 30% each turn for a total of 150, and then by another 30 for a total of 180. Damage taken is decreased by 30 and then by 40. Blocks damage on turn begins, and then there are plenty of different effects, like 2 extra BP, then he enters taunt, applies stealth like Wagnas in this banner, then he will be recharging by use of skill number 2, that is a fast skill that then gives him a lightning attack boost that lasts for 3 turns, he only gonna use it later. Then damage block. The skill itself is S power and it's single target. Blunt based, I don't know why. And then by that turn he enters recharging. And while recharging, he will be buffing Endurance and Will by 15% for everyone if he's hit. He's taunting. And then he also applies attack boost and defense boost to self. And will be on delay as well. Then on turn 3, he will attack 5 times with triple S power AoE. Yes, just lightning damage. That can be a lot, right? It does help with some specific things like challenge wells and, I don't know, remembrance fights? Besides that, there's not much to talk about the character. He has another skill that has AoE defense down in damage and buff breaks. But I don't think people will be using this guy because he does not counter. He taunts in order to buff, but he does not counter. He only wants to attack every 3 turns with triple S AoE power. But considering that many characters do have chains attacks, well, compare this to Orluge. They'll be attacking 3 times with C power, and that is very strong as well. And he has a lot of ways to increase his damage power. I don't know if he beats Orluge. And he's just lightning, even harder to find enemies weak to. So I don't really like this character, and I think it's a 3 out of 5. The last one will be Myron, and he's actually pretty good. 109% Endurance and Will, and 119 SGR. The other status don't matter much. He has a passive Super Strong Guard, where if everyone is alive, decreases damage taken by 30. And then he can also decrease damage taken for everyone by another 10. He himself has another 30 damage reduction. Improves damage for everyone by 10%. And then if you didn't get any debuff in your party, he then increases your damage by 40. And damage taken decreases by 40 as well. Well, that's pretty specific, right? It is. So you have 30% damage reduction, then 40%, and then 10%. 3 different layers, and 2 are big ones. By the end of a turn, he recovers HP for everyone by around 350, and also remove all debuffs, because yeah, he needs your party to not have debuffs in order to apply that 40% damage reduction. Okay, many bosses will try to debuff you, but many will also not. So in some situations, this guy helps. He also has 6 BP per turn, and that's about it. He barely does any damage. Skill 1 is just B power, and he tries to stun 2 BP, just for Remembrance versus Kazin and a future fight where we'll be able to stun again. He then has a D power AoE recovery skill that can revive if needed. Will probably recover around 2000 at least, and will also remove debuffs, because if the enemy debuffs you in between attacks, the next attack will already break his utility. So you may actually want to use this, and it's not fast. Then the third one, it's fast, and it is damage attack that can also remove debuffs. This works when the enemy debuff you on start of turns, so that you can cleanse that and still manage to apply his all effects. For Remembrance fights, this guy is awesome. He's going to help you atone versus the Megalith Dragon if you haven't cleared yet, or even future Remembrance. And he can even be used in some fights as support unit, especially if the enemy keeps debuffing you. He is probably the best character to remove debuffs in the game, if that is all that important. He competes with Fornews though. Fornews decreases damage by 30, he buffs all status. He also applies defense boosts, 2 layers of defense as well, and he's the superior version, but this character can be used on Remembrance fights, and also can recover 3 times, and that should be enough in some fights. Nonetheless, he deserves a 4. This banner will receive a bronze plus award, because I don't think it's important, especially now with the 7 Heroes banner. And if you didn't clear Axe Remembrance yet, it could help you with Myron, but even the M-Art's character here, Michelle, doesn't add much. You probably get Dantarg, and if you don't, you can also just wait for other M-Arts users since they are not so rare. Well, in the end, I recommend you to pull for 7 Heroes. It's a 7% drop rate banner, and you will probably be able to get something out of it. And all characters have some type of utility, contrary to the SaGa Soul banner, where I believe Sigfrei to be very bad. And even the other 2 don't offer too much. But that's just my opinion. I'll be making full reviews, and they will be long for the 7 Heroes. I can already start thinking about. But if you want to support the channel, use the link in the description, and don't forget to leave a comment expressing your own opinion. I hope to see you soon in the next video or live stream. Goodbye.